This is So Fail, So Good, the podcast that changes the way we talk about failure from women who have lived through it and learned. Today on the show, we have Jasmine RuKim. In the interview, you hear me refer to her as Jasmine Russell. That's because we spoke to her just before her wedding. Jasmine is the CEO and co-founder of Monocat Data, a strategic agency providing data management and technology solutions for the creative economy. Jasmine also teaches as an adjunct professor of creative project management at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. Jasmine is an incredibly thoughtful, intelligent, kind-hearted person. Every time I speak with Jasmine, I am fully locked in because she's so intentional in the way she communicates. Jasmine is a calming force. She's one of those people that after you spend time with them, you're like, I feel so much more zen just being around you. When can we hang out again? Jasmine's story today shows us how trauma can have an impact on our professional life, and entrepreneurs in particular face a unique set of challenges. Today's conversation with Jasmine includes discussion of gun violence, so if that's a difficult topic for you, please take care while listening. Now, on to the show. All right, Jasmine Russell, welcome.
Hey, Laura, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So we are going to just jump right in, and we're going to start from the beginning. So what was your very first job, first paycheck, like first actual paycheck that you got?
My first paycheck, Quiznos.
Oh, Quiznos.
Quiznos subs.
That's a throwback.
It is. Do they still have Quiznos? I
used to love Quiznos in college.
Yeah, I mean,
they do definitely still have them. Yes.
What's interesting is I wasn't really a Quiznos fan, but it was like close enough to the mall. So it was like motivation. Like if I work at Quiznos, then I can get all the like walking distance to the mall I want and sneak off
Hang
and
out with
everything else. Yeah. But it's a horrible job.
Oh, really? It was horrible.
It's just the cleaning. Like I'm a germaphobe, so it's like cleaning the pots, the food, the meat, I didn't like how I felt about fast food after that. So that was my one and only thing, and then I actually went and worked in the mall.
Okay, good. You learned. You're like, the only reason I'm here is for the mall, so I'm going to go to the mall.
Exactly. I was there for like 6 months.
Okay. And was that in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where you grew up?
It was, yeah.
Okay. And so growing up there, you stayed around for college in Indiana as well?
Yeah.
Correct?
So finished up at Northrop High School.
Oh, yeah.
Big school. It was like 1,500 of us there. I think my graduating class was like 800. And then went to Purdue. It's like if you're in Indiana, you're going to Purdue, IU, and then all the other ones, whoever they are.
Yeah, whoever they are.
So went to Purdue for undergrad. It was a great experience.
And what did you study there? And also you did track and field there too, right? So trying to balance that?
Yeah. So in my first year, I was an indecisive kid. I mean, I was good at math. I was in the honors classes, good at science, involved in the arts, took every photography class I could take. And really up until high school, I was like definitely in dance and different things like that. So when I got to high school, because of the way that band and sports worked, I had to pick one. So for me, it was like the extracurricular classes were always arts classes. So I felt really split, but I ended up being very confused on what my major should be. So I ended up choosing pharmacy of all things.
Really?
In that first year, I was like, yeah, like I like science, I like math, like I'll do pharmacy. And in that first year, I was like, this is definitely not for me. Like, I can't be behind a counter. This is not creative enough. I feel definitely stifled. And also it was like weed out classes. So that definitely caused a very difficult first year. But most importantly, like I just didn't feel like I could connect with people. So then I switched to psychology of all things, and took some time to really understand like what I wanted to do in psychology, which I think is a big misconception. There's like your traditional sit down clinical psychology, and then there's like industrial psychology or more stats based research psychology, which is what I went into.
Well, that makes more sense to me, given your data future. Okay, so you graduate Purdue with a degree in psychology, and then what led you? What was your first job? Was it there in Indiana?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I graduated in 2008, 2009, which is the crash of the economy.
Yeah.
And
Not good timing.
not fun for the millennials. So basically, I was like, well, I have the psychology degree, but around that time, I started to really, at the end of my degree, get into like the statistical side. So I was doing like research on dreams with a professor of mine over the summer, like doing focus groups, really like beefing up my stats. And so I wanted to take those things. And originally I was like, I want to go into brain management. But to do that, I needed some type of business backing, business degree. So
Did you say brain management?
brand management.
Brand.
I wanted to be a
Okay.
brand manager.
I thought you said brain. Like, here's my brain I'm using. And you're talking about dreams. So,
Yeah.
okay. So brand management.
You know,
Got it.
brain management,
Brain.
that's not a bad idea to
Brain.
manage the brain.
Okay. Okay. Good. I'm glad I clarified. I think that's fascinating because a lot of people talk about brand management. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I manage this brand. It's brain management sounds a little more interesting to me.
Yeah, that does sound interesting, but it was definitely brands,
Okay.
products, design, all that. That was the focus. I wanted to ideally work for Adidas. That was my dream brand, or
Oh, yeah.
Nike or something like that.
Yeah.
Just coming out of like the athletic background. But again, with all that, I needed some type of business degree. So
Sure.
I actually took a year off, I would say, but it wasn't really a year off. I went back home to Fort Wayne. I was a substitute teacher for about a year, which was interesting, just to kind of pass time and move through things. And I learned a lot about education. I actually got a job offer, but at that point, I had gotten accepted into the Kelley School of Business program. So really top tier program, top 10 part-time MBA program, and went there and did that part-time for 3 years in Indianapolis. Worked in market research, first in a healthcare-based firm, then in a firm that did a little bit of everything. And that's where I was really able to like apply the statistics, understand testing, understand how traditional analytics were morphing into digital analytics. And that's what actually brought me to Minnesota. I had finished up that wave of 3 years working full-time and then doing the part-time MBA in the evening, and Twitter and Facebook were starting to become a thing. And then I got a job for a digital analytic role to lead here. So yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So you get to Minnesota. What was your first impression of Minnesota?
So I was recruited in November.
Not great timing either.
Not the best time, but it was interesting because my first impression was from my first phone call. I was on LinkedIn late one night. I forgot where I had applied. I was just strictly looking for digital analytic roles, just to really get my feet in there a little bit more than I had, dive into it, and lead some good initiatives for companies. But I had gotten a call from a number that read Mankato, Mankato, Minnesota, and it said Navitor. And I was like, what? Mankato, Minnesota? Where did I apply? And so I had the phone call, and it had the Minnesota accent, and like, hey, Jasmine, like we loved your resume, and we want to, have a conversation with you, and we'd love to have you speak with some of our managers and potentially bring you in if you're interested. And so I could tell from the beginning they were very impressed, very direct, which I was impressed by. And then getting here, because this job was part remote, and then I would be in the Twin Cities the other days during the week, it was split with my recruitment. So it was 3 days where the first 2 days I was down in Mankato, and then the other 2 days I was basically, they said, we would love to have you, but here's an opportunity for you to really see the city, see if you like the Twin Cities and would like to be here. So I thought that was unique because I really got the chance to just explore, see some good artwork, which is always my thing, but also just get a scope of the area and the feel. And I think for me, coming from Indiana, one is the greenery. It was November, but it was still, I could tell there were trees. I could tell there was like a landscape to everything. And very taken back by the kindness of everybody. It was a little bit too much,
Yeah.
a little too nice. People were walking me down the street for directions, and that threw me off a little bit.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I was very impressed with what Minnesota brought.
At first, it can feel like, is this for real? Or are you guys just like, I don't know, is this a joke or something like that? But I remember when I spent some time in Chicago, loved living there, absolutely wonderful city. And when I moved back to Minnesota, it was just when you walk down the street and there's two people walking at each other. In Minnesota, you just say hi. Like you typically, or like smile at them or acknowledge each other. It's just not a thing that happens in a lot of other cities. And when you live somewhere for a while, you get used to that. So when you come back to Minnesota, or if you move to Minnesota for the first time and someone just says hi to you on the street, it can feel a little like, what do I have? Why?
Yeah. Like people open doors in Indiana, but there's a different level of attention. Kind of like when people ask you, where do you live? And you're just like, I live in St. Paul. But like, where do you live? Like, what street are you on? It's like, oh, well, I guess I'll tell you. But that was really, it took me a second to get used to that. But it's just Minnesotans.
Okay, so let's fast forward to when we talked before. We talked about these hackathons that you would do on the side. You would do it in addition to your jobs, and it was sort of a fun thing to do. Walk me through one of those, and first, maybe for our listeners, what is a hackathon?
Yeah, so hackathons are nice because it's an opportunity where you can just experiment. There's so many people that are in data, technical fields, any STEM field, and sometimes you just want to sharpen your skills, and it's a great way to kind of idea hack your mind to thinking quicker and sharper, and then take that back to the business you're working on or maybe the corporation. So I love the ideation of hackathons. For me, with hackathons, coming from Indianapolis, the tech community of builders was really the first way I was introduced into digital analytics. So it gave me the opportunity to, one, just tinker, experiment, and experimenting outside of like actual customers or an actual field study or an actual product. I think there needs to be that flexibility. So I always saw a great benefit in doing that. And the first hackathon that I did here in the Twin Cities was Hack the Gap. That is, I think, now in its 4th year going on. So it's been going on for a little bit, maybe longer. Maybe it's its 5th year. But Hack the Gap, all women's hackathon. Predominantly, most hackathons are men. Also, there aren't that many women of color in there at all. So it was nice that they were saying this is a space just for women, and women can build things just as good as men. And we have just as many skills. So when you first come into the hackathon, you designate your skills. So are you a tech person, a data person? Are you an idea person? Are you someone that maybe is just a good leader? So that opens up the gamut for anybody. It doesn't limit you if you're not like a builder or a coder. It just means you have a different role in your team. So within this hackathon, there was myself, Kim, Angeliki, Nora, and Emmy. So the 5 of us, we came together off of Angeliki's idea. So Angeliki, she showed up and she said, she presented along with some other people who had ideas that they wanted to build. And Angeliki says, okay, I have this Arduino on me and I have this Star Wars headset. And if anybody wants to play with this, okay. And then Nora, she went up and Nora said she had an idea where she wanted to do something with students. Where she wanted to build something that her students could build themselves and play with. So from that, Angeliki and Nora kind of came together on their idea. And then the rest of us kind of paired up. So Kim, she at that time was at Best Buy. She's been with Best Buy, I think at that point for like 15 years. So I guess Kim was like the oldest of the group.
Most experienced.
And most experienced, but also really open to like hearing ideas and wanting to move through things. So Kim brought that. Angeliki at the time was at the University of Minnesota. She had she was actually working in the neuroscience department. So she was just playing with brain things all the time. Nora was a teacher. Emmy was working at Lead Pages. So she was a good data visualization person. And then for myself, I was a data visualization person and also a data analyst. So those were the skills we brought to the table. And so the first thing that we did was just sit down and ideate. We went into a room and we just started to basically whiteboard. What could we do with this? What are some scenarios that we see? And the time frame that we had was basically a day and a half. So the first day was the biggest day we had to work through. Some people worked overnight on their ideas, but somehow we were able to pretty much get everything done within that day on our idea. What we basically came up with was the concept of creating a headset that students could use to meditate themselves. And the reasoning for that, Nora and her class, of course, you have students that have different disciplinary needs. There are some that are more active, some that are more quiet. But for the kids that are more active, it's like they need something that can help them kind of calm down, stay focused, and also a way where you're not just sending a kid out of class and then leaving them because they need discipline, but saying like, here's something to calm you down. And Nora's idea was it would foster like more retention for students in class, so they're not alienated. So the first two things we did was, one, figure out what nodes or what data points within the headset we could draw out. What we decided was to do a high point, so an alert point in the brain, and then also draw out like a low point, so when you're just calm and relaxed. This was mainly for time because we didn't have a lot of time to like bring out all the things in the brain. But we're like, we'll focus on these two because then that can be demonstrated and visualized.
And the high point is the moment when you're sort of, so if the low point is calmness, what was the high point again? Yeah.
So imagine if you were to have someone like, if someone was to just clap in front of you, that would alert your brain to be just more active. Your perception is up. So that would be an example of a high point. So we brought out those two data sets. We found where they were. And then what we did is we paired that with the Star Wars headset. The Star Wars headset basically looks like headphones, but it's connected to your brain. It's like a scaled down version of a neuro test where you see all like the wires and the plugs and everything else, but it's just really like two things on your brain sitting there and it's able to get some points. So I think that Emmy was like the test subject for that. So she sat down and we clapped and had her get some alert notes, and then we were just like quiet, and then that measured her brain. So that was kind of like our control in our test. After moving through that, then we needed to visualize it. So we used D3 to visualize the data.
What's that?
It's like a fancy coding software.
But Jasmine, I feel like so many people are like, this woman is a genius. What is she talking about? Just
D3.
But yes, okay. So we've got this amazing device on your head that was it made? So when you say Star Wars, is it supposed to look kind of fun for kids, or is it just a visual like to give to the audience of like what we're picturing here? Yeah,
literally a Star Wars headset is exactly that. It's a Star Wars headset. Like it is it is a toy that Star Wars fans use where they feel like they're
Okay.
I wish I knew the exact Star Wars movie that it came from.
We will post a photo.
Yeah. But it literally is like a Star Wars headset. And so people hack these and they reuse them. And I think that's the beauty of a hackathon. You may take like everyday materials or things that are unusual and turn them into something else for a different usage. So
I love it. Okay.
we utilized D3 to visualize these 2 data points. And we also used an Arduino as like
And what is that?
yes, an Arduino is like a fancy board that you could plug anything into. So it's basically like your base of energy where you could pass wires through it, pass nodes through it, pass data through it. It's like a central connection point, and it's used in a lot of hackathons and all that. So the Arduino is like the port of information that we were passing things through, coding things through. And then the Star Wars headset was
the vessel?
The vessel.
Okay.
So it was the connection to the brain to activate the data points we needed. And then the data visualization piece was layered on top of that. So the idea was after we connected everything and coded everything up, when someone put on the Star Wars headset, if you were to clap, then in the data visualization, we had 2 layers. We had a red layer on the bottom and we had a blue layer on top. The blue layer represented your calm state. The red layer represented your more active state. And then we had a circle that would overlap. So you would have a blue circle that if you're more calm would become bigger. And if you were more agitated or active, then the red circle would become bigger. So that would be like the visual line that people would see when we presented our demo. So after moving through that, it was like a day.
I love that that's one day of work.
One day.
That is incredible. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's like, again, the beauty of a hackathon. It's like you're literally just focused on one thing all day. And there were some teams that moved overnight. And I think there were maybe a few tweaks that we did in the morning, but for the most part, we had it done and we thought that simpler was better to get our point across. So the next day, we had Kim's daughter as the test subject just to kind of drive the point home of this is for students. This is something to meditate themselves. And her daughter was in middle school. And so she put on the headset and she sat in front of the audience and we basically gave our presentation of what the headset is for, the purpose for students, and trying to eliminate, students being alienated from classes, being able to meditate on themselves. And so she sat there and the audience was asked to clap. So they clapped. And you could see the data visualization working above her. So the red circle started to become bigger. Also, the spike lines or like the histogram lines for the red at the bottom were starting to jump. And then when it was calm, then the audience was able to see the difference where the blue circle would become bigger and then the blue lines would spike and jump. Basically, those spike and jump points were her brain, like activating and moving through it. Based on the connection points with the headset.
Very cool.
And that was it. So
that. Very cool. And what was the response?
It was great. I mean, we ended up winning that hackathon.
Awesome.
And so after that, I think the thing though is that we still had full-time jobs while doing this. And we weren't trying to monetize on the headset, but we were curious of how this would work with students. So Angeliki and Nora, they did a couple classes with students and just building this. So Nora had full classes of students actually build this headset themselves. The design was that simple. Then also...
So she had kids building it.
She had kids building it, yeah. And then also we did some different talks around the city just on the concept and different things like that. And then we just kind of let it go because we weren't at a point where we were trying to build something to sell something. But it was a fun experience to move through that with them.
And then after that experience, it sounds like, so you started a business, right? With some of those team members.
Yeah. So after that, me and Kim, there was this concept called the Proceed, or the business was called the Proceed. So me and Kim were having different conversations, and I was also really thinking through, like, there are a lot of small businesses that are unable to sustain themselves, and they often need funds or dollars and solutions that they have to go out for a loan, or maybe they're going to loan sharks, or they're doing deals with people that are buying things or buying them out that just isn't the best for them in their communities. So we started talking through that concept, and we came up with the idea of the Proceed. The Proceed was a point of sale system platform where we would basically be able to lock into your platform if there was a business that was, let's just say, a coffee shop and a cupcake shop. So let's say the cupcake shop is not doing as well. It's located in Northeast Minneapolis, and they need funds just to get them through that month so that they can sustain themselves, keep the doors open. They could partner with the local coffee shop or other local coffee shops, small businesses, and a coffee shop could say, off of every dollar that we sell, we'll give 50% to the cupcake shop. So the point of sale system would lock in. It would take those dollars and then it would give it to the cupcake shop. It was basically like the community being able to sustain itself with itself instead of having to go outside of itself. And also it was less invasive. So it wasn't something where they needed to say, we're in trouble to a bank. It's basically saying to select community members they want, we're in trouble. Can we possibly have proceeds from your sales?
That makes sense.
And that's why we called it the Proceed.
And if in that scenario, would the coffee shop then get funds back in theory from that same cupcake shop? Because, once they're back on their feet, it's okay, well, yeah, we'll return that back to you through our additional sales in the future. It
was on them. At that point, I mean, I should say we didn't get that far.
Sure.
So, but the idea, though, is that it would be on them because it's a proceed, something that you're giving, something that you're donating. The idea would be they wouldn't take that. They wouldn't have the requirement of paying that back. But that's on them. If they wanted to make that arrangement where they did pay it back, they could easily set that up for a later time. But I think being able to sustain themselves and not be dependent on a loan, that just gives more power to community to be able to actually help itself.
Very cool. And you mentioned you didn't get that far. So walk me through what led to the end of that experience. And were you working full time, by the way, when? Yeah.
During all these hackathons and things, I was doing things in community. I was speaker curator with TEDx Minneapolis. I was doing different talks with data and whatnot. I was pretty busy.
Sounds like it.
And I was also working at Jasmine's full time for 2 years during all of this. So these were definitely night hours. These were coffee shop hours from 5 to 9, plus working after that. It was, when I look back at it, it was a super busy time, but it didn't feel busy because we were so focused on what we were trying to create, what we were looking to get out there. And also, I think when you have two people that are really focused on the community, it keeps you focused and driven in that. But with that, at that time, Kim, she was moving through her daughters were in middle school and getting ready to move into high school. Also, Kim was a little bit older, so we were in two different places in our life with her having children of that age. And so there was just a time thing that we had time differences on. And we were lined up with testers. We had press on it. We basically had everything you could want before launching. But for us, what it came down to is if we can't launch it ourselves, then we can't move through the process of possibly trying to go for dollars, trying to push this out without a plan. So it felt like more of a team issue for us at that time than it was actually a technology issue.
So it sounds like team-wise wasn't working. And so how did you make the decision to say, okay, this isn't for us? Was it a split-second decision or was it kind of long and drawn out? Walk me through that, and having the press and everything. Was it a hard thing to announce to the world that actually this isn't happening?
Yeah, so I think that me and Kim, just on a personal note, I knew different things that she was moving through, like even beyond like her daughters and like that schedule and everything. Like there are other things where it was just like, when you're partnered in a business, you just know what your people are moving through. So it wasn't like, whoa, like this is unexpected. It was just like, you could kind of see where things were going. And so we basically in our last conversation about the proceed, because I've seen Kim since then and we're still on good terms. We basically sat down, had a conversation, and just was really honest on where could we possibly take this given where things are. And also I was at a point where at that time, like I didn't want to move forward if Kim wasn't on it, because I felt like we put so much time into it and Kim really understood the concept of it. And I think looking back where it was, I could have easily gotten another team member and I could have easily gotten a marketing person and things like that. But it just didn't feel right at that time to do it without Kim. And so we had that conversation. And then as far as press, we didn't really feel pressure to like clarify where's the proceed. I think it was more community members wanting to know what happened because they were looking forward to being able to test that and the possibility of it. So I think personally for me, that was hard because the people that were lined up for testing and some people that had started to test things, they could see the value in it. And that is hard to take because then you realize this could really help people, but because the team isn't there, you can't move forward with it in the way that they want you to move forward with it. But I think after a couple months of just processing it, I was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how quickly was it that you moved on to decide to start Monacat Data, your current company?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing because we had started initial research on Monacat in like June of 2016, literally just sending emails out, sending emails out to arts organizations, because that was our focus. So nonprofits, entertainment labels, just anyone in the arts to see, what do you do data-wise? What do you do tech-wise?
And who was we? Were you and Kim doing that together?
So no, that wasn't me and Kim. So Monacat, before it was even named Monacat, me and my business partner, Kurt, started having conversations of what does this look like? What is the possibility of helping an arts organization? These arts organizations are understaffed. They don't have enough team members. They don't have a data or tech person. They really could use that help and specialization. So those were those conversations around June. And then also...
And this is after you decide the proceed is not going to work, and then you start having these conversations with Kurt, or was it before?
This was before. So
you're just running with ideas. You got a lot of ideas.
There's a lot of ideas in there, but I should probably back up a little bit. So with the proceed, we started building the platform in, I want to say like October of 2016. October of 2015, we started moving through that. So some timelines on people connections. So I met Kim at the hackathon. That was January or February of 2015. I was doing other things in community, started ideating on the process of what the proceed could look like. It was super, super rough. Right. I mean, when I first mentioned it to Kim, it was like, okay, I could see that. But then she added more to it. And so that's why I say I couldn't see myself doing it without Kim, because I felt like my jumbled initial idea for things and then Kim's like clarification somehow through my jumble, like that's what made the proceed idea what it was. And so from October 2015 to December 2016, 2017, we were working on that concept. We were building it. 2016, getting my timelines. It was a year and 2 or 3 months of moving through that. And then with Monacat data in 2016, in that summer, me and Kurt had started conversations about it. And then it was an experiment. Like, it really was an experiment. Will this actually work with arts organizations? Now we say creative businesses. So anyone from product and design to performance venues to architecture firms to still arts groups, entertainment labels, anyone within the creative industry now, that's our focus. But at the time, because it was arts, because it was more nonprofit, we had to do our research.
Sure.
So while me and Kim were still moving through the Proceed, I was just starting research to try and understand conceptually, is it possible? But from that, in October of 2016, that's when we received our first 2 contracts for Monacat.
Okay.
So at that time, I think in my head, the idea was the Proceed is building. I didn't have this concept of, I want to be a multi-entrepreneur
Right.
and also have this corporate job. It was just like, I guess these are just freelance things.
Sure.
These are things that we can just do and see, again, is this viable with this work? And so by the time December came and things were kind of moving on the close of the Proceed, with just our team, it opened up more opportunity for Monacat to really keep going and to really give that some time and space.
Okay. And so I remember when we first talked about Monacat, I'm not exactly a data person, and it was for me trying to understand. You gave me an example that really helped me just totally get it, and it was with one of your clients, Atmosphere, which is, if you're from Minnesota, you better know Atmosphere. That example really helped me understand what is Monacat and what do you guys do. Can you share with our listeners what that is in that example?
Yeah. So our first 2 clients were Springboard for the Arts and then Rhymesayers Entertainment. And so with Rhymesayers Entertainment Group, been around for 20 plus years at this point. Lots of incredible artists that have gone through there, including Atmosphere. And that was the data that we focused on at that time. Basically, artists have tons of data that flow through entertainment labels, from the amount of shows they're performing to physical versus digital sales, how they're distributing, key areas that they're distributing to, from the content that they're putting out, interactions with that content, or just how they could increase and share and distribute their brand. So with Atmosphere's data, we were specifically looking at physical versus digital sales. Where are they selling the most? Is that effective? How often are these locations buying? Are they buying the right albums? Should they be buying more based on their sales? Should Rhymesayers as an entertainment group be looking to sell more to specific distributors based on current music that's popular, based on Spotify, based on other channels of streaming music? And then looking beyond that, in getting ready for a tour, where are the popular areas that this artist is known? Like, what music should you perform? What song should you perform based on streams and downloads in that area? So really breaking down what some people would say, oh, this is so tailored, this fits me so well. You need analytics to do that. Yeah. And so that was the focus of that project, really tailoring based on data for an artist that has a long history of information, a long history of data on the back end, making it feel custom to that listener, to that customer, to that fan, and helping Rhymesayers be a better entertainment label with that.
Awesome. That makes sense and is so interesting. So you've started this business with Kurt, and at what point do you realize, okay, I think I need to leave my full-time job? This is taking up too much time. We're getting too many clients. How far in are you that you're saying, yeah, this might have to be a full-time thing.
Yeah, I should also say there's another team member, Cassie, that crept in there.
Oh, yes.
So 3 of us co-founders. So me and Kurt initially had the first conversations on the idea. Launched out the website one night, and Cassie and me and her had met as speaker curators with TEDx Minneapolis. So then Cassie came in. She was traveling the world. She was in remote year. And she basically, in a nutshell, was like, if you're really serious about this, I would love to talk about this when I come back. Because with her arts and technology background, it was like the perfect fit, where she would just get it, understand it. And so she came on the team as a PM. Kurt, his role was mainly like facilitation and paperwork. Cassie, having the technical background, was another ad. And then for me, it was like data with a cross with technical. So that was like our co-founding team. And what was the question?
It was, at what point did you realize you have to leave your full-time job?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in 2016, I had basically decided that would be my last corporate year. I think that for me, the corporate environment, specifically at Justin's, it was hard. It was a hard year. One, we were moving into a new administration that we didn't know at the time would be the Trump administration. But what that did is you have an organization that is like 120 years old. There were a lot of just discussions and conversations that were rubbing people in a way that was not comfortable, but in a good way. I mean, you had these students, audiences, people that are younger that have very like forward opinions. You're also customizing like products and designs and things toward them. You have some people that have older ideals with that. And there's just like a clash. There's just a clash across the board that was happening publicly, that the public knew. I mean, even looking at yearbooks. So you would have Facebook was starting to become a competitor to yearbooks, or Instagram was starting to become a competitor to yearbooks. So,
and that was something Justin's, they specialize in yearbooks, right? Or what does Justin's do?
Yeah, so they specialize in yearbooks, class rings. They also have the most championship rings than any other company. So they've done like 38 of the, I think it's 52 years now, but at the time when I was there, they had the 50th Super Bowl. So they've done like 38, maybe more of those at this point. They also do the Heisman Trophy. They do the big hockey trophy.
Stanley Cup.
Yeah. They do like all of the major celebrations and things like that for professional sports. And then they have a slew of other things, which is educational services and things like that. So for me, though, my decision to make it my last corporate year wasn't because of what was necessarily happening in Justin's. I think it was pushing me, though.
Sure.
I think there are certain things where you just feel like, I don't know if this is where I want to be. And then also, I was starting to mentally check out more. I was leading the market research department, and I wasn't fully in it. And I think that was like a flag and a sign for me that it's probably time for you to really consider what fits you. And for me, that was more agency, more creative work, more work that wasn't necessarily in a process or strictly process setting, that just things just take longer in corporate. And I think that's okay. But I think I wanted just more flexibility, edge, and like just being more on top of trends than I was. So in 2016, I decided that would be my last corporate year. Had no idea what that would look like. I just knew that something needed to shift before the end of the year. And then with everything that was happening in the country, and then also things that were just happening with the organization, it was time at the end. And I had put in my 6 weeks before December, just given my role within the organization, and made the shift out after that.
So you leave Justin's. You now have the ability to focus full time on Monacat. And the business starts to pick up. Like you guys are getting a lot of clients and trying to maintain that. I'm sure it gets pretty tricky, and knowing when to hire people and where to work from, and amongst or during all of that, something personal in your personal life happens that sort of throws a curveball as business is starting to get pretty busy. Can you walk me through that experience and what that was?
Yeah. I think, it is definitely a process once you leave corporate and then you go into full time. I mean, just for picture's sake, so we'd gotten our first 2 clients in September of 2016 or October, moved through the process of completing those projects, and then we had like this pause. We had this pause of, February's done. The projects are here. Now what? Now I am fully full-time. Cassie's, her role was pretty much remote with her corporate role, so she could be in on any meetings. Kurt had a full-time job within education. So again, lots of evenings, lots of time there. And then we were starting to get hit with different projects. In the summer, we got hit with like 5 projects within like a month and a half, which sounds great, wonderful, especially after like coming off of the break that we had for a few months, but also really difficult in setting up like just the structure that we need. So, and then in the fall, we had gotten a few more projects, which is also great, wonderful, but we basically had burned ourselves out at the end of that first full year with our team and our schedules. And so then moving into the next year, in 2017, we had overflow from 2016, which was our 17, which was great. We had overflow going into 2018, and we were trying new things. We were testing a business development manager for the first time. That didn't pan out the way we wanted. We were getting new projects, but it was based off of the work that we had done and the traction we had made in the previous year. And then with all of that, then we went through a really traumatic event where we were in me and Kurt were in a shooting. So myself and Kurt are engaged. So that's another team dynamic on our team. And one night, I guess to just set that up, one night we were basically walking after a celebration of my birthday. So my birthday's June 5th. And went out June 8th on a Saturday, decided to walk through the parking lot instead of this dark alley, which sounds smart. It's lit instead of the alley we came in, and passed through 2 people that were basically unknown to us, targeting each other. And then like 20 seconds later, then I'm like screaming for no reason, on the ground, basically disoriented from being shot, which was completely unknown at that moment. I mean, it's something that no one prepares for. You can't describe. It is the most out of body experience I think that anyone could ever experience. And in moving through that, I mean, from a business side, you have 2 co-founders, not to mention like our relationship. There's like the partnership side of it. Like there's 2 partners that have gone through this seriously traumatic event that we've both been shot by the same bullet, because Kurt was standing on my left side and his right arm was around me, which is completely unexplainable. How does that even happen? There were, with this even passing through my left arm, there was no major arteries, no bones hit. For him, it just split his skin. And I say just in a way of like, it could have been so much worse. I mean, this was happening on the left side. It could have just a couple moves to the right, and that could have been it. And it was to our back, so there's no way of us knowing or seeing. And there are pros and cons to that too, being prepared and actually seeing it. Maybe that could have been better. Maybe that could have been worse. But you have 2 co-founders that have moved through that. And so for our team, being a small team of 3, having a few contractors that we were doing per project work with, it really was like a testing summer, because then Cassie being the PM, then Cassie's having to step up and like manage the timelines, manage the schedules, rearrange things, trying to maintain privacy for our team of like processing through that from a client standpoint, but also trying to make sure she's just showing up and there for us as friends. And then mentally, I mean, so it happened on a Saturday. And then after happening on a Friday night, it happened on a Friday night. I think the best metaphor for where we were mentally is the next morning, my parents were coming up from Indiana. And we had all these friends that were trying to come by.
At the hospital?
Well, that's the thing. Because it wasn't life-threatening, quotations, whatever that means, we were discharged that same night.
Oh, wow.
And so that's a whole other layer on it, where you go through this traumatic event. After the shooting, being rushed to the EMR, you go through the process of the hospital. Kurt's getting stitches and all that. We don't know where each other is in the hospital. Kurt's mom shows up to pick us up. They basically were waiting for the painkillers to set in to me before they could have me leave. And once those set in, they're like, okay, you're good to go.
Wow.
Like, that's it. And because we had started to hear, or Kurt, he was talking to the police officers and had heard information that the target had actually driven himself to the hospital. Like, he was actually shot in the stomach, the target of the 2 parties that were actually going to each other, which is crazy because the distance was about 20 minutes from where we were. And we traveled by EMS versus them by car. So to hear that the person was in the hospital, your brain just goes through everything. I mean, it goes through like, would something happen? Do people recognize us? Even though we didn't know the people at all and it was just a stray bullet, like you just don't know. Yeah. So this feeling of exposure starts to happen within your PTSD. And we went home and tried to process as best we could. And I had a sling, and they took both of our clothes for evidence, and we just had like the hospital gowns. So
you went home that same night.
Yes.
This experience happened, this shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what does that feel like to sort of have so much, like you said, mentally happen, and then almost feel like, well, it's only been, a matter of hours that you spent in the hospital. So the physical result, I guess you have a sling and he has stitches, but what you've gone through, how can you, I guess, balance that feeling of, I'm out of the hospital already, maybe am I supposed to just be okay? Like, how do you move forward?
Yeah, I don't think you do. I don't think you do balance it for a while. I think your brain tries to recover itself. And for us, it was seeking normalcy. So like that next day when my family members were coming up and we knew friends would be by the house out of concern, I remember that morning shutting off the phone because my voicemail was completely full. I think I had like 25 missed calls or something. The text messages were just, it was just like everyone you could possibly think contacting you. Yeah. And I think timing wise, I know timing wise that in April, me and Kurt were engaged. So this happened in June. So that's another layer on top of it. So it was like just everyone from both sides that were contacting. And so we had wanted just to clean the house like you would do.
You got family coming over, right?
Friends coming by.
Yep.
We just wanted to clean the house. And so I had the sling, I had some pain meds, I was cleaning. Kurt was like washing the dishes. His wounds compared to mine were not as severe, but he saw more than I saw with me bleeding out on the ground. So I think our brain was really trying to, and us wanting to feel normal, but it wasn't. And so saw people that weekend, and with that normalcy brain, it's like, oh, I can go back to work. I can do that. And so on Monday, I went back to work. Kurt didn't go back to work, but that Monday, just like a couple of days after, I went back to work. And
was that to seek the normalcy, or what made you think I'm ready to go back to work at this point?
I didn't want to sit in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was so angry. I was like, this is something that had nothing to do with me. I don't know these people. I have stuff to do. Like, just normal, like, I have stuff to do. I have things to complete. And also, we had an intern that had started that summer. Cassie, she'd been doing things over the weekend, but that was like one of many checkpoints where I had tried to go back to work, but was unsuccessful. Like, probably around noon that day, I was starting to feel just overwhelmed and exposed, like, just because it was in a safe place, or like thinking it was in a safe place that the incident happened. It's like, then your sense of safety is just off. And so I felt like work would be a safe place, but I didn't realize like my mental was not ready for that. Like, I needed to just be at home. But for me, it was just wanting to just be there for everybody and keep things going. We also had projects that were going on. We had a deadline for the accelerator we're in right now that needed to be completed like that day. And so I was like, I just really want to get some things done, at least get this deadline completed and finished. And so it was, looking back at it, completely irrational. Completely irrational, but I just wanted to feel normal.
Hey, I mean, I think that anger you mentioned, right? How this person thinks I got stuff to do. I mean, that I'm not going to let this define my week, my day. When I mean, I don't know how many small business owners can relate to this experience, because it is very unique. But it is something that when I can't imagine what it felt like, but I can understand your feeling like, I'm going back and I'm not letting that experience or those people who did that to me define what I'm doing next.
Yeah, I think even if it's not like as traumatic as a shooting, everyone goes through something as a business owner. It could be someone losing an intimate family member, like whether it be a husband or a mother or father. People go through so many health issues as entrepreneurs. I mean, people are like human. Like, we have these experiences that we move through. But I think the layer in being an entrepreneur is we don't have the time to process as much as everyone else. Like, we have to not only process the trauma of family or personal life experiences, but we also have to perform. And I think that's, over the last year, what I've been working to balance and move through. So with that experience, those first few weeks and really months where I needed to work hard in the morning and then take a mental break during the day and literally check out for the rest of the day, I started to plan my schedule around that. I found that I was more productive with a set time frame of maybe like 8 to 1 or 8 to 2 or 8 to 3, or if I was working a full day, like being intentional on, I need a 2-hour break here, and like just giving myself time to recover so I didn't feel like I was missing out, but also listening to my body at the same time.
Yeah, it's not like on the Monday after you could email your boss and say, hey, I was shot over the weekend. And in that experience, your boss would say, oh my gosh, don't come to work, anything you need, right? When you own your own business and you're an entrepreneur, that experience looks so much different. You have to decide on your own what's best for you. And it can be easier to say, well, I have an intern that just started and I have all of this stuff I have to do. We have the accelerator deadline. I'm going to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find that, I know you came up with these, boundaries from the 8 to 2 and kind of working through your schedule, and being intentional. Did you find though that there was a point at which you might have realized, okay, I need to process this?
Yeah, that for me was December of last year. So the shooting happened in June of 2018. And then around December, I finally had 2 weeks. I was like, I have 2 weeks of vacation, nothing to do. And I usually do that every year anyway. But I literally had no time until then. I mean, I had board work that I was doing. There were service projects with the business. We also had our first Yellow Summit that September. We'd gotten into the accelerator. I was engaged during all of this. So we were trying to plan our wedding, get like the major things of the venue and everything else done. Just, just life on top of work. But I think layering that with processing PTSD, processing a shooting, trying to now not only to business partners, but as in our relationship, trying to help each other through that. Like my mind was so busy between June and December, and I had no time to process. So that by the time those 2 weeks came in December, I feel like I just slept for 2 weeks straight. Like my body just completely gave out on me. I mean, I think the thing is, entrepreneurs are good at like compartmentalizing. And I think part of that comes from me doing sports and dealing with different family things growing up and being able to like compartmentalize. Like, let me just perform. Like, I don't feel the grace, but let me just perform and do this. And entrepreneurs are constantly, things aren't the greatest personally, but let me just perform. And I think I had gotten so good at that. But with the shooting, this is the one thing I could not compartmentalize, and it drove me crazy. And it still drives me crazy sometimes, because you could be perfectly fine, and then out of nowhere, you just feel emotional with PTSD, or you feel like anxiety because your body is processing adrenaline differently. And I'm starting to learn more things about that. But so that time in December, I felt like the depression and things that I would compartmentalize for the weekend or for after work, which was definitely a good 3 or 4 months of just like working hard, then going home and just being like super weepy, like just because my body needed to do that. It could not balance both. It needed that moment. And then even after that, so at the top of this year, my main focus was like body. Like, how do I feel about my body? Being unsafe with the body, not feeling like it is something that actually is good. And so going through that, and then finally stepping into therapy like this, like in the last few weeks, like actually doing individual EMDR therapy. So yeah, I think it's PTSD is a real process. And I think for entrepreneurs and people moving through it, I mean, the EMDR person I'm going to now, she said, I talked to her in November, she said, I will probably talk to you, and you are used to performing, you're used to compartmentalizing, you're used to getting through things. You'll probably leave this conversation and not contact me. And I was just like, okay. I was like, I'm gonna contact you. Like, I'm gonna just like, what do you mean? I'm definitely gonna contact you. She's like, I just want to let you know, whenever you're ready, I will be here, but don't go too long. And I didn't contact her until a few weeks ago. And the first thing I wrote within the email was, I definitely think I waited too long for EMDR therapy. She's like, that's fine. Well, now that you're ready, we can get started. And I think it's such a like human line. Like, when you're ready, then you can get started. And I feel like that's pretty much been the year of balancing all that. Yeah.
What sort of impact did you see this personal experience going on for you and your fiance? How did you see that impact your business?
I think I was more focused, but the time, what it did for me is it helped not only me, but our team realize we need a strong structure. Like that is the biggest thing we've gotten out of that. And that's what we've been working to set up really since the top of this year, but like talking through what that would look like. Because what if something does happen to all of your co-founders? Where does that leave your business? And if one of your co-founders, being me, is primarily responsible for new business, they have more front-facing things than other people on your team. What does that do if that's not in place? So it's like, we definitely need new business people. We definitely need PMs. We have to have other data analysts. The three of us can't do the majority of the work anymore, because if something was to happen to us, we would have no time to take a break. So that's the most positive thing that's come out of it. And also, I think it helped us work together more, where it helped us understand and realize how much each of us was taking on and where people could take on more things. So I think it helped us work together better. And then coming into the accelerator, it's like we had this crazy experience as a team that we were now working to process, and our focus was different. So for us, it wasn't necessarily like just wanting to move into like new business right away. It was like, we have projects that we need to see through, but because of all this health stuff our team is moving through, we need to make sure the quality is good here. Let's really focus on structure. And so by the time February came around, we felt like, well, one, our sales did go down because we had to have time to process. But we felt like, although our sales had gone down, we were set up better for the rest of the year. So I feel like it's almost like we had to crumble internally to build back up. And that's what we're moving through now. And it's been tricky, but I wouldn't trade it. Yeah. Maybe not the shooting part, but, the learnings from it. Yeah.
Can you, this is a complicated question, but can you describe to me, especially in this case, it's a question I ask during these interviews, but can you describe to me how that experience has impacted your identity?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like actually identifying with it. So I will say, for the longest time, I wouldn't say shooting. I would say incident. And I think like the definition of what fits or what doesn't fit with me as a person with a shooting, that's where like incident versus shooting was coming out for me. I mean, I feel like it's so far from my character and who I am. So it's like in networking, I wouldn't bring it up, but if someone from community was to ask, like, how have you been doing, like, during that time, I would either not say something, or I'd be like, oh, I went through this, like, incident, or I'd be like, oh, I had a shoulder injury. Like, I would just kind of, like, cover it up, because I think as much as I didn't think I was about perception from other people, like, just kind of on my own thing for this one, because I felt like it was so far out. And also like being a Black woman, it was like, well, I don't want people to think like I know people that are involved. And I really didn't. But I mean, so for me, incident was like a security thing with the wording of it. And then more recently, I've just been more comfortable in actually saying shooting, because that identifies it, that puts a face to it. And also, this could happen to anybody, like regardless of what you do, who you are, how you're involved in community, the unknown, like, invasion of safety, that could be anybody. And so I felt more of like a responsibility in saying like shooting versus just masking it. And I think with myself, trying to being a very spiritual person, very spiritually Christian person, like my whole concept and understanding with like, God, why would you do this? Right. Why would you let this happen to me? Like, I'm a good person. Like, what is the point? What is the purpose? And I think I'm still moving through that spiritually. Like, what is the point? What is the purpose? Like, where is this going? Because I don't know why you would have me move through something like that. So my spirituality was definitely rocked for a minute. But I think that as strong as my faith is, like I think probably like, I don't know, around December, I was still like watching church and reading the Bible and things like that. But I think that in December, I was able to actually see the I don't want to use grace, but like the protection that had happened, like the angle of things, the fact that it was one bullet that hit both me and Kurt, that makes no sense. Like, I can't even describe it. Like, the fact that it moved through the middle of us, it's like, that is nothing but God in that. And so I can't question that. And then I think with my body, trying to just see myself as acceptable, see myself as like attractive, or as someone that was as confident as possible without even thinking about it previously. Like, I felt like my confidence shifted, or like I had just gotten more quiet because I was now processing spaces more and the people and things in it. And I was also just getting overwhelmed. So I think my personality has shifted a bit, but I think that's where the individual therapy is so helpful. And that's why, like, if there are people that move through those traumatic events, going and getting support individually and also as a couple, even if two people in a relationship don't go through it together, I think still having traumatic therapy as a couple is important, because you're going to be a different person. You may be more numb some days, more depressed. You may be happy for no reason. And your partner's just like, wait, you were just like depressed 2 seconds ago. what's going on? So it's going to mess with their mental too, and trying to process that. So there's so much in there. But I think that because it was around my birthday, June 5th of last year, and then it happened on June 8th. This year for my birthday, it was like, last year was crazy.
Oh, to say the least.
It was crazy. I was talking to one of my uncles and he's like, how do you feel on your birthday? I was like, I'm just glad 31 is over.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's how I felt about 61. And it's like, sometimes you just have those years where you're just glad it's over. But now it's like, because 31 was so crazy, there's a lot of good things professionally that people saw. But for me personally, it felt like it was a year of rebuilding myself. And then business wise, like, because I was rebuilding myself, it took so much more effort to like get energized for that. Or some days I would be super energized because I didn't want to think about the things going on with me. So this year I'm just like, 32, I like 32. There's not as much drama. I'm not taking as much. And also, I'm very clear on tolerance now. I think something life altering like that, it is so clear on what should fit in my life, what should not fit in my life, why was I so patient with those things? Why did I tolerate those people? You look at everything in a different way of like, this doesn't fit. Yeah. And I'm going to say it like right in the moment, like, this does not work for me because 31 was so crappy. Like, right. I don't want to spend any more time moving through that.
A new lens.
Yeah.
So to shift gears just a little bit more about your business, you mentioned spending time working on that. late in the evening and doing it because you kind of didn't want to think about what was going on personally, right? Can you walk me through a night like that? I think a lot of business owners can relate to, or career professionals too, just that when something tricky is going on in your life, using work as an excuse to sort of, and maybe excuse isn't the right word, but using work because it feels like, hey, I can perform there. So yeah, can you walk me through what that was like when you were sort of really putting the heavy focus on work when maybe personally that was a tough time?
Yeah, anytime I'm working late into the night, it's either one, a deadline needs to be met, or two, like I'm trying to escape from something. And I think a third point on there is like, maybe I'm just in a really high creative focus. Like, I used to be a strictly night worker where I would work from like 7 to maybe like 12:30, 1 o'clock, or I would do shifts where I would, even with corporate, I would come home, maybe go to yoga, take a break, and then I would work from like, eat dinner, and then I would work from like maybe 10 to 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't think about it. Wow. And so I think that my brain taps into a different type of creativity at night. And also it's quiet, like everything is quiet. The neighborhood is quiet. Most of the city is quiet. A lot of people are like sleeping, unless they're up working. And I think there's a certain stillness in that just works with my brain. And I think I needed that during the shooting. I needed moments of stillness. I felt like I was always looking for like just peace and quiet, whether it was going to a park, going on a solo camping trip, going out into nature. The nighttime offers stillness that just opens up the brain in a different way.
Yeah. And you did mention that sales had gone down. So this time for your business, as you said, you were kind of internally crumbling as a team to build back up. What was that like? I know you have a board and having to sort of report those numbers and say, well, yeah, we didn't hit it, or it wasn't going where we thought and it didn't pan out. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, we had decided to bring in our first board on, or I think it was maybe November, we decided to do that. Like we started to have those initial conversations again, saying we need other people to keep us accountable. And every member on the board knew exactly what had happened. And I think that was like part of the reasoning for selecting those people, not necessarily like they know about the shooting, but it's like they fully understand like what's been happening with our team, and they have a certain expertise in community. And so to tell them like, we did not meet our numbers. This was probably the lowest quarter, like for our Q1 report, like this was our lowest quarter in the history of our business. They came back and they said, Jasmine, like, do you know what you've been moving through this year? Like it was interesting because they reminded us like, your team has been through a lot. Like you've been processing a lot, and you've also been doing a lot. And it may not feel like you've been doing a lot, but you have been rebuilding. You have better systems in place that you didn't have before. And that's going to open up more opportunities in the long run. I think it's easy with entrepreneurship to think about the short term because you feel like you're just trying to get these quick wins. But when you have opportunities to really stretch out and work on the long run, work on those big ideas, those will pay off. So I'm still kind of in the mindset of, will it pay off? Right. Will it actually work? But it's nice to hear a board say it will work as long as you put in the work. I just need to see that through. So yeah, I work through that mentally daily, and it's nice that they keep us accountable.
Well, it sounds like they gave you a lot of grace. And in that moment, there's so many business owners that don't hit their goals, right? There's always a quarter that we all have that just doesn't hit. We don't meet the goals. We don't surpass them. But all you hear about and all people are sharing is we met the goal, we exceeded the goal. I think there are life circumstances that sometimes prevent us from reaching those quarterly goals, yearly goals, whatever it may be. So obviously there were extenuating circumstances here. And again, your board gave you that moment of grace and saying, hey, I mean, you've been through a lot. It makes sense that these are the numbers and it's okay. And we're excited about what's ahead. But internally for you, being that business owner, and being that we're talking about failure, and that's what this podcast is all about, was there any feeling there where you'd sort of feeling let down, or that you'd let anyone down? What did it feel like when you did see the numbers at the end of it all?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a shock to the system, but it's a shock to your pockets. I think that's what you feel first. It's like you are processing, you are moving through things, but like you feel it with your pockets, you feel it with what you have to rearrange, like what you have to do. And I think the financial aspect of it, that's just constantly in your face. So on top of whatever you're moving through, it adds another layer of anxiety. And I think that's also where the breaks became really important, because I had to kind of say to myself, what is the purpose of all this again? Like, what are we trying to do? Who are we trying to help? And that's what's really like brought me back in those moments of high uncertainty, feeling like we were taking high risk and continuing sometimes. And I think sometimes people see risk as like that next big move, but sometimes just continuing as an entrepreneur feels like a personal risk to you, because you're putting certain things up financially, or you're not taking care of yourself, or you're not able to meet those numbers. So I think I had to just start being more open. And I think being honest, as simple as it is, being honest with the board before that quarter happened, of like just individual meetings. This is where we are. This is what we're moving through. Instead of trying to mask it, like, it's okay, I'll power through it. Then you start to get solutions. You start to actually hear opinions on what can happen. And there was another time in our business where we were we'd overpaid a contractor. We'd overpaid a contractor. And we needed to make a decision on if we wanted to do a small business loan or if we would just come out of our pockets. And we decided to do a small business loan so that we could also build our business credit. And it was something where we didn't have to use it all. But at the time before we learned all of that, it was a big decision for our team. But until I'd even opened it up to the team of like, what should we do? What should we do? I was like trying to figure out the numbers on my own in my head. And from that experience, I learned that you just need to speak up sooner. Like you just need to say like, this isn't working sooner, because as soon as I did that, then it's like Kurt and Cassie just came with like a list of suggestions and recommendations. And so this situation is very similar, where your board is there to not just get the highlights and the high points. They're there to help you navigate through those tough times.
And, you know, a big thing that we're focusing on, and I want to help listeners understand, is resilience and the courage to try again, and the courage to just keep going. And as I hear your story, you know, I think a lot of people might be thinking, how did she keep running her business? Like, how did you keep doing that? And I think it takes a lot of courage. Is there anything in particular, anything that stands out for you after that meeting, for example, with your board, and they're like, hey, we got your back, it's going to be fine? Was there the resilience you had to say, okay, we're going to refocus the business. I'm going to keep going forward. What is it in you that gives you that? If anything comes to mind, I mean, I think it just, for learning perspective from me, it's really amazing and inspiring to hear. So, yeah,
I mean, so Monocat Data, we're a service and SaaS business. The service side, data and technology support for creative industry teams. And then the SaaS part is new. So we last June had started developing an idea for a data platform for creative teams to keep them more accountable, building creative confidence. And so all those things were moving. We still had clients.
Yeah.
We still had clients, not as many clients as we would have liked, but we still had clients. I mean, at the top of this year, we had like 4 projects that were moving and going on. We were making headway with the platform, trying to figure out how that would be viable. We also had gotten a partnership for our Yellow Summit, which is a creative technology summit. We had that here in Minnesota last year, but now we're taking that to Indiana. So there were things that were moving, although we felt like we were pretty stagnant, but there were things that were moving that we had to speak to. So that for me is what was really keeping me going and making sure that I was motivating the team to keep moving through things. I think that's something else I realized. I didn't like the way I felt when the shooting happened because I'm such a mood for the team.
Right.
Like if I'm not like upbeat, then the team feels a certain way. Or if I'm not like as perky or timely about things, then the team feels that way. And I think that pressure was something I didn't really realize until the shooting, or how much I affected the team until the shooting. So it made me realize we need more systems, because there need to be more people or more voices that can keep things going beyond myself, where if I need to take a break, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so where is Jasmine Russell now? And what are you dreaming big about?
Right now, I am looking forward to this fall. We, like I mentioned, are having our Yellow Summit in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So taking it back to my hometown and having it there. Looking forward to a good turnout, and also just highlighting a different region for creative technology strategy, highlighting other leaders, not just within the Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky area, but also bringing in some people nationally to talk about what they're doing. I'm looking forward to our platform development. So seeing that through, going through some different data logic that can be useful, getting more testers onto the platform. We've had some really good success this summer in initial conversations. So I'm looking forward to that. And then also just our offerings. We've been able to narrow down our offerings as a team, what we do, become more streamlined, and highlighting like those key things that work best for our clients. So I think that we're in a really good place of stabilizing and building, and not just trying to like get to the next milestone without a plan. I feel like we have a really strong plan in place, and just seeing it through this fall.
That's big. Plans feel so good, don't they? We have a plan. Okay, last question for you, Jasmine. Hindsight is a powerful thing. And knowing what you know now and sort of everything you've experienced, what advice would you give yourself as you were going through that challenging time?
Go to therapy earlier. Go to therapy earlier. Go to therapy within the first few months, if not the next week after the incident happened. I think speaking up sooner, so not feeling like I have to take on everything emotionally for the team, but really being explicit in saying, I don't know how I'm going to feel over these next few weeks, so I may need more help, instead of just trying to power through it. I think also like just being more patient with myself. It's easy to be hard as an entrepreneur on yourself naturally, because you feel like you are driving the business, and you are. But I think the next level to that is really having other people own the business and have their spin and their perspective on things. So not feeling like I have to take everything mentally on for the success of the business.
Very well said. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you for sharing and for sitting with me today.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
Did you notice that Jasmine didn't talk about her experience as extraordinary? Her perspective was that everyone goes through something. It will play itself out in the work you do and the life you live. It's inevitable. But entrepreneurs don't just go through these things. They have to perform through them. The experience she had that impacted her both physically and emotionally, while others understood it, she was still in the entrepreneurial mindset of, no, we got to sort this out. This has to get done. And it can feel like, okay, sure, life is happening around us, but our business is spinning faster and we're trying to keep up with it. Jasmine had to keep up with her growing business. Life doesn't just stop when a tragic accident occurs. And I honestly had a really difficult time finding a resource for today. I haven't been through this experience. And I think that probably means there isn't one easy resource to deal with a traumatic event as an entrepreneur. We really make our own rules when tragedy strikes. We don't get that email that you get to send to your boss that says, oh, this happened. I need to go do this and this. There's a funeral I need to go to or something. And they say, take all the time you need. We have people ready to cover for you. You have to make that call. You have to make your own rules. So instead of providing an article or a book or a podcast, I'm going to share a new company I heard about. It's called BetterHelp. It's an online tool, totally not a sponsor of ours, but for busy entrepreneurs who don't always make time for their own mental health, BetterHelp is online counseling with a licensed therapist. And I can honestly say I have not tried this, but I have gone to therapy and benefited immensely. Everyone processes trauma differently, and it's okay to seek help and support when you are ready. Thank you so much for listening to So Fail, So Good. If you want to know more about the show or today's guest, visit sofailsogood.com. This is a Matriarch Digital Media production. Executive producer Twyla Dang. If you want to know more about Matriarch or other podcasts on the network, head to matriarchdm.com.